when I did my first gig, I didn't really have any comedy heroes to speak of, you know? Like, it's not like I loved, you know, I mean, I knew who Billy Connolly was, but I wasn't necessarily a massive Billy Connolly fan. I knew who Steve Martin was. I mean, I loved Steve Martin, but I loved him in movies. And I loved Jim Carrey, but I loved him in movies. And the same as, you know, Dan Aykroyd or John Belushi. I loved him in movies. But as far as stand-up goes, I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it.
Well, just before I introduce today's guest, a big shout out to Pete Oldfield and the Southern Slugs for sponsoring this episode. They've got a wonderful trip happening in December over there in Phuket in Thailand for those interested in playing some over 35s footy. Get involved in that. Head over to the Southern Slugs Facebook page for more information. Well, what an absolute pleasure it is to have Anthony Lehmo Lehman on Comedy Legends with Bevo for the first time.
Bevo! Well, yeah, who said dreams don't come true, eh? Here we are. Finally chatting on Beers with Bevo, right? So
yeah, yes.
Look, I don't have a beer with me. I'm having a water at the moment, but it's probably a bit early in the day for me.
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, isn't it, around the world, as they say?
Well, yeah, that's what they say. I need a 0% alcohol beer. The rise of 0% alcohol in inverted commas, it does disturb me.
I'm with you on that. What's the point?
What is the point? I don't understand. Yeah, they say, you know, places like Dan Murphy's will tell you that sales are going through the roof. It's their fastest growing market. This is a millennial. I don't understand millennials. I never understood them to start with, and I continue to not understand them.
I'm with you. I'm with you, mate. Hey, speaking of dreams come true, not many people probably know this, but back in 2005, you actually broke a Guinness World Record for the most jokes told in an hour of 549. Round of applause, mate. That's a sensational effort.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell us more about this and how you prepared for this as well.
They were, so here's, I'll give you a quick version of the long story. In 2003, I did a show at the Adelaide Fringe. No, in 2002 at the Adelaide Fringe called My Goodness, My Guinness, which was a show about the Guinness Book of Records and my love of the Guinness Book of Records. And to help promote that show, in Rundle Mall one lunchtime, I broke the Guinness World Record for most jokes in an hour in Rundle Mall, right? But I only did it as promo for my show. So I never submitted it. And I didn't really care much, to be honest. I just wanted, and loads of people turned out in Rundle Mall. It was really fun. Adam Spencer emceed it for me, and it was all great, right? But it was good promo for the show. Then I did that show in 2003 at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, right? So I thought, well, I'll do the same stunt out the front of the town hall. But this time, Rove covered it, Rove Live on a Tuesday night. Yeah. So Damien Callanan was with me, counting the jokes. There was a big crowd at the front of the town hall, and Rove during the show did crosses back and forth to get the joke count, blah, blah, blah. And I broke the record, but again, I didn't submit it because I didn't really care. I just wanted to do the promo for my solo show, right? So I did that, and that was great. Then 2 years later, Channel 7 contacted me, and they said, we've got this TV show about the Guinness Book of Records, hosted by Grant Denyer and someone else, I can't remember. And they said, do you mind doing your jokes in an hour thing for our TV show? And I thought, oh, yeah, that's a bit of fun, sure. So I did it again at the Rhino Room in Adelaide for that television show on Channel 7 about Guinness records. They would just go around to different people who were breaking records, and they filmed it, and then I broke the record. But by that time, the record was 499 jokes. When I first did it in 2002, the record was like 250 or something.
Oh, wow.
And then anyway, Tim Vine, an English comedian, held it 499. I did 549, and it was for the TV show, and they ticked off on it, and I'm in the book in 2009. I've got it here somewhere in my office, which is cool, and I got a certificate and everything else. But I never really cared much about the record. And then Tim Vine, or not necessarily Tim Vine, but someone lodged a complaint with Guinness saying that I used these cheat cards while I did it.
What? You're kidding.
Which you were allowed to use 10 cheat cards. That was part of the rules when I did it. So there's one word on each card as a reminder of a category of jokes or whatever. Anyway, so Guinness changed their rules to say you couldn't use any cheat cards. So they took the record off me and gave it back to Tim Vine.
Oh.
So that is the journey of me breaking the Guinness World Record for most jokes an hour. So I've done it 3 times, got the record once, had it taken off me, but I am in the book and they can't take that off me because the book's on my shelf right here. And I can't take the certificate because that's here somewhere as well. I don't know where it is, but it's here somewhere as well. And so that's the story of that. Then as far as learning them, look, they were all just crap jokes off the internet. So it was, I learned them in categories of 20s. So it was like, man walks into a doctor's surgery jokes. Guy walks into a pub jokes. Husband and wife jokes, knock jokes. And I just remembered them in groups of 20. But they were all crap. They were just such bad jokes. People would say to me, now I held the Guinness World Record for jokes an hour. Quick, tell us some jokes. And I just can't remember any of them.
Because they were that bad.
They were so bad. But also, for the jokes to be included, they had to be laughed at. That was one of the rules, right? So I had a handful of fake laughers in the crowd. So if ever you go back and watch the vision, I'll do a joke like, a skeleton walks into a bar and says, oh, can I have a pint? And you better get me a mop with that, right? And then so you hear someone in the crowd go, nah. Another joke and someone goes, nah. So you just hear fake laughing through the whole thing. Anyway, it was all just, I only ever did it to promote my solo show at the Adelaide Fringe and the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And then Channel 7 chased me down to do it properly for that TV show.
Brilliant.
Most jokes told in an hour. There it is. So it's just there.
That's fantastic. Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. So it says Anthony Lehman told a total of 549 jokes in 1 hour at the Rhino Room Club, Adelaide, South Australia, on May 25, 2005. Yeah.
Surely when you promote your shows, Lehmo, that must be on your little bio there. Guinness World Record holder.
It's funny, I mean, I never spruik it just because it was never a dream of mine to break that record. And I kind of, in the end, did it only because Channel 7 had asked me to, and I thought it'd be good promo. It was never something I kind of pursued. But anyway, it's nice to be in the book.
Yeah. And can you remember, I know it's a long time ago now, 2005, but can you remember what the 2 best jokes were that you told?
Oh, God. They were just, it would have been things like, what's brown and sticky? A stick. Like that, I'm sure that would have been one of them. 3 men walked into a bar. You'd think one of them would have seen it. I mean, it's all those, just so many of those. Doctor, I feel like a set of curtains. Shut up and pull yourself together. Just all of that.
They're so bad that you can't help but laugh.
Yeah, that's the point. And it there was a bit of that on the night. Like they were so bad that people, couldn't help but laugh along,
Oh,
so, yeah.
That's great. And another thing that found out as well, actually, I've got to thank Rory, my producer, for this one, doing a bit of research for me. But you're actually a chartered accountant before you started getting into comedy with Lehmo. Tell us about that career change and how this came about.
I worked as an accountant from 1991 to 2001, and I did my first ever comedy gig at Bolt's Cafe in Adelaide on the 1st of December, 1993. So nearly coming up on 30 years ago now. So I did that, and I just fell in love with it immediately. So I did accounting and comedy at the same time for 7 years, roughly, before I finally went, really 8 years, actually, before I finally went, you know what, I'm going to quit this day job and do comedy full time. So, yeah, I was just, and I was just going to be an accountant. That was my thing, because I grew up in country South Australia where your career choices were, you become a school teacher, a farmer, or an accountant, and that was it. I chose accountant, and yeah, and I did it for a few years, and I did, I kind of enjoyed it while I was doing it. And then I worked for a couple of different banks in London. I worked for Citibank and Deutsche Bank in London for about 3 years as well. But I was doing comedy in London at the same time as doing that. But yeah, eventually I stopped enjoying it. Like I would turn up to work. My boss called me into his office one day and said, "Are you quitting?" And I was thinking about it, right? And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" He said, "Well, you haven't ironed a shirt in 6 months." And he goes, "You're taking every second Monday off, and you wear a tie to work every second day." And I went, "Oh yeah, I am quitting." And he goes, "It's probably about time." So he knew where my heart was.
And where'd you first develop that passion for comedy? And was it through like someone on TV or through a family friend, or where'd you get that influence?
Well, it was really, my passion for it really came through just doing it, to be honest. I mean, I didn't have any, when I did my first gig, I didn't really have any comedy heroes to speak of, Like, it's not like I loved, I mean, I knew who Billy Connolly was, but I wasn't necessarily a massive Billy Connolly fan. I knew who Steve Martin was. I mean, I loved Steve Martin, but I loved him in movies. And I loved Jim Carrey, but I loved him in movies. And the same as, Dan Aykroyd or John Belushi, I loved him in movies. But as far as stand-up goes, I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it without having a kind of a hero. But then when I started doing it and I started getting into it more, that's when I fell in love with Sam Kinison and George Carlin and Jerry Seinfeld. And I used to love the little snippets of stand-up on the TV show Seinfeld. That excited me, so I love that. So it was only after I started doing it that I really started falling in love with stand-up comedy as a thing. I mean, I loved performing. I was always a joke teller ever since I was a kid. As a 10-year-old, I'd be at our footy club rooms every Saturday night, just going from group to group, telling jokes to people. Or if people wanted to hear a joke, they knew I'd have one, so they'd call me over. And they go, "Tell us a joke. What do you got?" So I was this sort of roving child jester at our football club, as a kid. So I always loved that attention. I loved making people laugh.
You mentioned before, gig number one, you talked about it, it was in Adelaide. And how did it go, Lehmo?
It was, I just killed. Like, I absolutely smashed. It was unbelievable. Like, for you couldn't dream of a first gig going any better than mine. I absolutely smashed it. And then that was it. I was hooked from that moment. And look, if I'd gone on stage and completely died, would I have kept coming back? I don't know. Because you need a thick skin in comedy. But luckily I got a taste of what it feels like to make people laugh like that. So yeah, I fell in love straight away. And I remember my first ever routine was about holding in when you start dating someone new and you hold your farts in. And it was a fart routine, but it was a story. Like, it had a beginning, middle, and an end, and it had a great punchline. It was a really good bit, for a first up crack at comedy. But I remember being so nervous, I was blind drunk as well. Like, I was blind, but still, but still did it. And
wow, that's risky, because that could go two ways, couldn't it?
It could definitely go the other way. I wouldn't recommend it. Not recommend it.
I know exactly what you mean, though. I remember going on dates with girls and you're just holding in farts and your stomach is so sore. And then as soon as you finish that date, you get back into the car and then just let them all go because your stomach's just like, oh, thank goodness.
Let it go. Exactly. So that was my first ever routine. And it's just, started what's been a great career for me.
And has there been...
My career started with a fart. There you go.
With the farts, I love it. Has there been some jokes that you've told perhaps in Australia and then you've gone overseas and told those same jokes, but they haven't gone down as well because of, the different kind of cultures?
Yes. Look, I'm sure there has been. I mean, nothing springs to mind, but you definitely have to, alter stuff a little bit depending on where you are. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff that you can present in the exact same manner. And it's even little words you have to change as well when you travel. Fanny has a different meaning here than in the US. You've got to be careful.
And thong?
And thong as well, So you need to look out for those things. But even in Australia, I noticed with pandemic stuff, with COVID stuff, the COVID experience in Victoria was very different to the COVID experience in South Australia. So even there, you had to change, alter material depending on your audience.
Yes, they were in lockdown a lot longer. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're always changing little bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah. And what's been the strangest place you've done a gig before, Lehmo, in your 30-plus year career?
Probably in the desert in Afghanistan, I guess, would have to be. It's hard to get weirder than that, performing to Australian troops in Afghanistan. That would be the weirdest place, I think. Like, now, if you'd told me when I started doing comedy that I'd be performing in Afghanistan one day, I would not have believed you.
Yeah.
So that's got to be it, I think. I mean, I was due to do a gig in Antarctica, but we had to quickly get out because the storm was coming. And when because we were at the base and we were doing a story for the project, and I was going to do a comedy gig that night. And bad weather was coming, and they said, no, you have to get out and fly back to Australia. And we said, well, can't we just wait till the storm passes? And they said, it was funny, they said in Antarctica, you don't fuck with storms. The storm could go for a month.
Wow. And
like a complete whiteout where you can only see 1 inch in front of you. So like you have to get out now. Or you might be stuck here for a long time. We had to leave. I was with Josh Frydenberg as well, who was the environment minister at the time. So we had to leave, unfortunately. So that would have been high on the list of weird places to do gigs. But Afghanistan, I think, is definitely number one.
Yeah, and I wanted to get back to that, actually, because it must be hard doing a comedy show for troops that are going through some pretty tough times, let's be honest. And, they've witnessed some of their friends pass away, and a lot of obviously mental health issues that some of them have got as well and we know that the post-traumatic situations that some of these guys have post-war and what have you. So, yeah, what was that experience like, Lehmo?
You know what? The gigs are just such a joy, and they're amazing audiences because they're in a high stress environment. It's a high stress job, and there are all sorts of pressures nagging at them every day, from work pressure, and stress from home as well. I mean, there's people who are away from their families for 6, 9, 12 months at a time. So when you perform comedy for them, they are ready to laugh and they need a laugh. So some of the best gigs I've ever done have been in Afghanistan to the troops. And, and it feels good as well. You feel like you're doing a good thing when you're providing them with some relief from that super stressful environment that they're in.
Yeah.
So they're great. Also, when the hecklers have got guns, I mean, you do try a little bit.
How do you deal with hecklers in general at your comedy gigs? Because everyone has their different ways of dealing with them.
Oh, look, I've changed over the years. I've been inspired by Stuart Lee, English comedian Stuart Lee, who said, because I used to be really combative with hecklers, right? I'd have all my heckle put downs, and if someone started on me, I'd just go bang, 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 and just hammer them, like obliterate them. Okay. But that was when I was younger and had a bit more attitude about myself on stage. Now I'm inspired by Stuart Lee, who once said that he treats every heckle as a genuine inquiry. So when someone heckles, he doesn't respond back to put them down. He asks what they mean by the question. Can you please explain yourself to me? Which is just brilliant, because heckles invariably are just brain farts. So as soon as you ask one question of someone to explain themselves, they've got nothing. They end up just embarrassing themselves trying to explain what they mean by the heckle. So
I like it.
that's kind of how I deal with it these days.
And you once played yourself on Neighbours as well, Lehmo. What was that experience
Yes.
like?
It was great. It was great. The original script I got was for me to play a character who was dying in a comedy club, right? And then this kid comes into the room, one of the Neighbours actors, I can't remember the character's name, but he comes into the comedy room and he's being chased by someone. And he jumps up on stage and grabs the mic and cracks a joke, and it's heaps funnier than anything the comedian had done. That was kind of how they'd meant it to roll out. And I said, look, I don't really fancy dying on stage since comedy's the thing I do, even if I'm playing a character. I said, what if I play myself and I'm just doing my own material and it's funny, and then the kid comes in and he's really funny as well. And they said, yeah, fine, that's great. So I got to play myself doing stand-up comedy on Neighbours, which was amazing. And I have to pinch myself when I look at the list, because if there's a Wikipedia page dedicated which just lists all of the cameos on Neighbours over the years, and it's pretty wild. It's a pretty wild list. Yeah. And so to be on the list is it's a real honour, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's like Katy Perry.
Big names.
Yeah, it's amazing. Warnie. There's just so many absolute megastars on that list. So it's great to be.
And whilst we're on the topic of TV shows, Utopia is going gangbusters, Lehmo. We're into season number 5. They're doing the filming at the moment. We'll get to that in a moment. Yes. But so Lehmo, obviously Utopia is going really well. You're doing some filming at the moment for season number 5. What attracted you to the role of playing Jim?
Look, the main attraction for me was working with the geniuses at Working Dog, who are, when it comes to television in Australia, I'm not sure. Well, there's definitely not a team who has contributed more to the Australian comedy landscape than the Working Dog team. Everything they touch turns to gold, and they are just a joy to work with. So as soon as I got the offer, I could have been playing a serial killer who hated puppies or something. I don't know, but I would have said yes if it was meant working with Working Dog. But it was for this amazing comedy. So I just jumped. That required no thinking time whatsoever. Just the opportunity to work with those guys was enough for me. So I was just in straight away. And as it's turned out, it's just been such a gift professionally for me to be able to do now 5 seasons of this amazing character, Jim, who's really annoying, but incredibly relatable for so many people who work in the public service, and just really frustrating, but also funny for a lot of viewers as well. So it's a joy to be able to do it and to read the scripts that, Tom Gleisner, Rob Sitch and Santo Ciallaro write. It's just a joy. So I love it. So I would have done anything with Working Dog, and I'm just over the moon that it's turned out to be Jim Gibson, tedious public servant, faceless man in Utopia.
And how do you balance doing the show with your comedy gigs as well, Lehmo?
So we film, largely you're filming during the day, so it's fine. You can go off and gig at night. Well, when we are filming though, I prefer, to be honest, to not have gigs at night. I like to just focus on, my character, what he's up to, get into the zone. My character's motto, and, people listening might know someone like this. You might know someone like this, Bevo. But my character's motto is: a problem passed on to someone else is a problem solved. So I don't think a lot of people in government can relate to that.
Yes, I worked in government for 11 years, so I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. A lot of people, they just move shit around from one office to another, or one department to another. That's what
they love the handball, Lehmo.
Yeah. Jim just walks around with pockets full of grenades and just throws them to people's offices as he wanders on his merry way and sleeps like a baby at night.
And have you got a bit of a teaser for season number 5 for the people that are listening today or watching?
Yeah, sure. What can I tell you? Look, there's a lot going on. There's There's a solar panel rollout that goes a little bit pear-shaped. There's dramas around the office. With the episodes now, the writing is so tight and the episodes are so dense that now there are 5 storylines running through every episode. So you'll have a storyline about a super boring work colleague at the same time as a story about, a statue that someone's trying to knock down somewhere. And then there's a storyline about the solar panel rollout. And then there's a storyline about, a photocopier not working in the office. So there's something in every episode, there is something for someone at least. But it's just so much fun. But yeah, every episode has about 5 or 6 different things going on at the same time.
And the rest of 2023, what's happening for Lehmo as well as Utopia? You got some gigs coming up?
Yeah, lots of gigs around the place. You follow me on social media. That's where I tend to plug the gigs that I've got. A lot of corporate stuff as well that I'm doing these days, which I really enjoy. And look, the Ashes is about to start, so I'm going to watch a lot of cricket. Hawthorn aren't great at footy at the moment, but I'm going to watch a lot of Hawthorn as well. And also there's Wimbledon, Tour de France. It's a good time to be alive.
Absolutely. And let's just finish with your Hawks. How'd you first get love for the Hawks? How'd that happen? You mentioned before you were born in Adelaide. How did the love for the Hawks occur?
Well, I grew up in country South Australia, and my local footy team, the Brownswell Football Club, we had brown and gold stripes. So that was it. I was a Hawk from a very young age. Just fell in love with the brown and gold. Not many people fall in love with brown and gold, but I did. I've been a mad Hawk since as long as I can remember, and they've brought me a lot of joy over the years. So I'm very happy with my choice.
Yeah, I think they're heading in a good direction as well, Lehmo. Give them a few years and they'll be all right.
Yeah, I think they are. They're going to be all right.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Lehman, thank you so much for joining us on Comedy Legends with Bevo. It's been an absolute blast. Keep up the great work with Utopia and your gigs. And once again, plug yourself. Where do we find you?
You can go to the socials. I'm Lehmo23 on Twitter, Lehmo15 on Instagram, and just Lehmo on Facebook. Get in there and I will see you at a comedy club or whatever. Soon in the ABC, 8 p.m. Wednesday nights on the ABC. Utopia, 8 p.m. Wednesday nights on the ABC.
Love it, mate. Keep up the great work and we look forward to catching up when you're in Adelaide next.
Good on you, Bevo. Appreciate the support.